Hello everyone, my name is Satyam Raha, and in this video let's talk about the super keyword. Okay, so let's create a class A and let's have a constructor, a non-parameterized constructor. Let's print in A, right? Okay, let's do let's have another class B, and let's have a constructor for B, and let's have in B. Okay, now if I create an object of A, what will happen? So if I create an object of A, what will happen is it will call the constructor of A, the non-parameterized constructor of A, isn't it? You know this, right? It works fine. But now say if I want to create an object of B, now what will happen? Now in B is called. Okay, so you see what is happening behind the scene. Okay, let's see. A and B has no relationship right now. So let's connect them. Let's say I'm extending the class B to A. Okay. Now if I execute this code, see what happens. Something weird has happened. In class A is printed. Why? I have created an object of B, but why is there an object, a constructor call of class A? That is weird, right? So let's see what happens if I have a parameterized constructor. Let's say I have a parameterized constructor, say in say int A, maybe. Let's copy it. Let's have the same thing here with B. Okay, and in int B. If this is the case, now see what happens. If I create an object of B and I send a parameter, say 7, now which one should be called? What is your guess? Obviously, the parameterized constructor will be called, isn't it? So when it is called, then what will be printed? In int B should be printed. Let's see what gets printed. Oh, so in A is printed first. After that, in int B is printed. Why is that? Let's understand how it works. So when a call, let's first check the non-parameterized call. So in A, in B is printed, right? How does it work? Actually, whenever I'm extending the class B to A, what happens is all the subclasses will have a super call by default. Even if we are not providing this, the compiler will provide this like this. Okay. So what is super? Super is nothing but a reference to the superclass constructor. Superclass constructor. Okay, the default constructor like this. This is not a default constructor, but it looks like the default constructor. It is basically a non-parameterized constructor. Okay, so by default, when the compiler provides these, what happens is it calls the superclass constructor, non-parameterized constructor by default. Okay, that is why when we are creating an object of B with no parameters, what is happening? This particular call is happening. This constructor is being called, and see the first line here. It's super. So it directly goes into this and it prints in A. After that, it returns and it calls this. It calls this println and it prints in B. Okay. So I hope you understood. Now let's check with a parameter. Let's say I want to send 4. Okay, now which one should be called? So in B, this parameterized call should be happening, right? And obviously you can see there is super, which is not provided by me. Okay, let's delete it. I'm not providing it. Actually the compiler is providing it. So what is happening behind the scene? If I run it, in A is called because super is there here, present here by default. It is present by the it is provided by the compiler. So when it enters this snippet of code, what happens is first super is called. That means the non-parameterized constructor of the superclass of class A is actually called. That is why in class A is printed and the first, then in int B is printed. Okay. Now you see, suppose I do not want this kind of happening. Let's say I want to call from here, I want to call the parameterized constructor of class A. So I can simply send A here. Okay. So when I write this, what happens is I'm actually explicitly saying which constructor of the superclass is to be called. Okay. Now what will happen when I create an object of B? What will happen with the parameter? What will happen? The parameterized constructor will be called, and the first line here is calling super A. That means the parameterized constructor of A will be called first. That is, in int A will be called, will be printed. After that, in int B should be printed. Let's see. Yeah, it works fine, right? Let's say, let's say another case. Let's say I do not want to send any parameter. Now obviously this snippet of code will be run, and let's say by default what will happen, by default in A and in B will be printed, right? If I execute, yes, in A in B is printed, but I do not want this. I want the parameterized constructor of A should be invoked, followed by the non-parameterized constructor of B should be invoked. If that is the case, what I can do is I can send a parameter here. Okay, in this way. If I send this, what will happen? When I create an object of B, now with no parameter, the non-parameterized constructor will be called of B, and the first line here is super B, super 5, right? So this is a parameterized call to the parameterized constructor. So obviously this will be called. So in A will in int A will be called first, followed by in B. Let's execute the code. Yes, it works fine. Okay, so this is how the super actually works in Java. Along with that, you can do one more thing with super. Super can be used to invoke the member variables or the member methods of the superclass. Say for example, I do not have this kind of things, so let's delete it. Let's say I want to let's say I have some int I as a member variable of class A, and say I have a for example, say I have a void show method in class A which simply prints say in a show. Okay, simple. So if I want to invoke these particular things, this member variable or a member method from class B, then I can use a super keyword. Say for example, I want to assign something to I can simply write super.I equals to 6. Works fine. Now so maybe I'll write this out. Let's print obj.I. Okay, so B is object of sorry, obj is object of B, and I have initialized this I to 6 using the super keyword. Now if I execute this, see, 6 is printed. Okay, so if I want to access the member variables of the superclass, I can use the super keyword. Fine. Now say I want to call the show method of class A. So what can I do is I can simply write super dot show, right? So if I execute this code, the in a show is printed. Okay, so this way you can access the member methods and member variables of the superclass from your subclass, and it works fine. Okay, say I have a method, say a simple method called display maybe. Okay, and in the display, say I want to have super dot show. Does it work? It works fine. Let's delete it from here, and let me call display. Let me call obj dot display. So display will call show method of class A, and in a show will be printed. Let's check it. In a show is printed. Okay, so in this way you can use the super keyword. I hope you understood. See you in the next video. Thank you.